Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, excruciating negotiations between Israel and Hamas, hammering out the details on a ceasefire in Gaza and limited hostage release. Plus, teaching children to hate, how UNRWA school curriculum glorifies anti-Semitism and the removal of Jews from Israel, even encouraging violent means. And one father's quest to see his son, an American citizen, freed from captivity in Gaza. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this special edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. We're here this week in West Palm Beach in preparation for the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, where supporters of Israel and friends of President-elect Donald Trump will be out in full force. We'll have a report on this later in this week. But first, here's the latest from our news desk.
The hostage ceasefire deal is still up in the air, but the U.S. is talking optimistically.
The parties are right on the cusp of being able to close this deal. Whether or not we go from where we are now to actually closing it, the hours and days ahead will tell. But I believe it is there for the taking, and we're going to do everything we can to push it to get it across the line.
There's been a handshake, and they're getting it finished, and maybe by the end of the week. But it has to take place.
Media reports say 33 hostages would be released at the start of the deal, but Israel is not sure how many of those would be alive. The release of more hostages would be negotiated in later stages. Israel appears ready to sign the deal, but whether Hamas will is unknown.
We see some progress in the negotiations. Israel wants a hostage deal. Israel is working with our American friends in order to achieve a hostage deal, and soon we will know whether the other side wants the same thing.
Palestinian people deserve peace, the right to determine their own futures. Israel deserves peace and real security, and the hostages and their families deserve to be reunited. And so we're working urgently to close this deal.
This progress comes after what the Times of Israel reported as a tense meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and President-elect Trump's top Mideast envoy. Some hostage families and their allies have marched in Jerusalem to protest any deal that does not free all the hostages at once and in which Israel gives up hope of crushing Hamas in Gaza.
President Trump did not pressure us to give in to the Hamas. Pressure them to give in to us.
There is no confidence that this deal that is starting today with a number of hostages will actually continue to a deal that will have a second stage or a third stage.
Vice President-elect J.D. Vance says the reason there is progress is because of Trump's threatening Hamas.
But regardless of when that deal is struck, it will be because people are terrified that there are going to be consequences for Hamas.
Meanwhile, the fighting continues in Gaza, and the Houthis fired 2 ballistic missiles at central Israel overnight. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
One of the unpublicized scandals surrounding UNRWA, the UN Relief and Works Agency, is its curriculum to teach Palestinian children to hate and kill Jews. David Bedeen has been studying this for years and spoke with our CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl in our studio.
David Bedeen, welcome to Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you very much for having me.
How are the Palestinians, what contribution are the Palestinian schools making to peace, and what are they instilling in the children in terms of their perception of Jewish people and Israelis?
The schools of the Palestinian Authority are doing everything possible to stop any advancement of peace. What we have here is a system to teach the children to make war on the Jews, to kill Jews, and to say they have no place in Israel.
Wow. And how do they do that?
Well, they do that by repeating often enough the mantra that the Jews have no rights in Palestine, and that anything that's been built here is despite the Jews. And every aspect of life here is downgraded so that there's no mention of Jewish history, and Jews are only mentioned in a pejorative context.
Wow. So who can change this message in the schools, and how can it be changed?
Every member of the United Nations can change that. There was a plan in 1991 to start something called the Refugee Working Group. I was at the Madrid Peace Conference, and it was just not carried out. That all of the 67 nations that finance UNRWA take 20 of those nations and develop a curriculum for peace. Except it was vetoed by the Palestinian Authority and by UNRWA itself. Whereas the United Nations symbol and slogan for peace, for education, is peace begins here. With them, with UNRWA, it's war begins here. The war on the Jews is the focus of Palestinian curriculum, and that's something that has no place in the United Nations.
And would you say this has any kind of an anti-Semitic undertone?
Absolutely. There's an absolute anti-Semitic undertone to the entire UNRWA system. Jews have no rights. Jews have no positive things to mention about themselves. And what's most important is that the Jews have no rights in the land of Israel or in what's called the land of Palestine. People talk about two-state solution, but what we have in the school books and in the entire UNRWA genre is an effort to delegitimize any mention of Israel, any mention of Jews. And as I wrote in my book, The Roadblock to Peace, is that you have a key, and a keyhole, and the entrance to the Ida refugee camp. Ida meaning right of return.
Oh, wow!
And it's right near the grave of the prophetess matriarch Rachel. And whereas at Rachel's tomb it says, our children have come back to our borders, here it says their children have come back to their borders. We're talking about, instead of having an entity, a Palestinian entity that lives alongside the Jews, it's one that conquers the Jews. The issue of conquering Israel is the focus of Palestinian education. And that is not appropriate not only to the two-state solution, but to the principles of the United Nations. One of the principles of the United Nations is peace begins here, and a recognition of every nation state to have self-determination. This is the opposite. When we received from the Palestinian Authority their idea for a state, what we learned was that there is no juridical status for Israel, for Jews, or for anything in Israel. And the idea of making war on the Jews because they're Jews, this is where it's taught. I want to be very clear about something. People say, oh, that's the Nazis. No, the Nazis did everything they could to hide what they were wanted. Here it's very open. The Nazis never put in Mein Kampf into their curriculum. These people do.
So, all right, now you're saying that it's very public, but why do people not know about this anti-Semitism and this indoctrination of the Palestinians?
People who have promoted the Palestinian Authority in what's called the peace camp have done everything possible to obfuscate the reality, and to say that they want peace, but again, that it doesn't exist. It's saying an entity that doesn't exist, saying that it does exist. And when the Palestinians did form a peace curriculum at the request of Israel, it was vetoed, and therefore it's not known. So that Arabs are very nice people. On the other hand, it's not reflected in their curriculum.
Wow. Thank you very much, David, for joining us today on Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you.
Israeli social media influencer Tal Or is a significant voice in the digital space, exposing anti-Semitism and jihadist ideology on his Instagram post. One of his latest videos gives a sobering glimpse into how some Gazans think and how they might speak when they don't know they're talking to a Jewish Israeli.
Since the beginning of the war, I've been receiving countless DMs on my Instagram from Gazans asking for help. And my first reaction has been, call me. You see, I want to know what people there are thinking, how they feel about the war. The thing is, none of these Gazans have ever called me. Until...
This is good.
Can we talk about your situation? What is your situation?
And in April, I decided to go to Egypt with my family. In the crusade, they not allowed to take my family and husband with me.
Where did you learn to speak such good English?
Yeah, I studied from Quds Open University.
What was the life in Gaza before the war?
All people in Gaza are happy, and we live in beautiful home. We wear beautiful clothes. We eat beautiful foods. Everything was amazing. We want to recover our previous life.
October 7 is good or bad? Sabba October.
For me, I said it's good, and they are very courage. Give their life for Gaza and for us and for Jerusalem.
How can we free Palestine?
We can free Palestine by what did on 7th of October.
Are you happy with October 7? It's good for you?
Yes, I become proud of 7th October. I celebrate in 7th October, and we are proud of them. Yes, this is the truth.
يعني إن شاء الله كله رزة شهيد.
إن شاء الله.
Wow.
Hamas, for me, I love مقاومة. I respect Sinwar. He fights in the last breath to kill Israel and occupation. Give Gaza a lot.
Of course. And Hania also.
And
Hania very good.
Ismail Hania, I'm very sad when they killed them.
Haram that they haram. How do you feel about Yehudi? Do you like Yehudi or?
Of course no. Why? They killed our children. They stole our dreams. They demolished all our dreams and our house.
Kulu Yehudi, even Iraqi Yehudi, European Yehudi, Kulu Yehudi.
Yeah, and in our Quran, Allah told us don't respect the contact between Yehudi.
Yehudi is bad.
What?
Not good.
Yeah.
You love Hamas. Like Hamas is good.
Yeah. I love all Palestinian people. Hamas, Fatah, I love them all.
In the back of my head, I'm thinking, how does she not know I'm Israeli? These questions were so on the nose. I honestly didn't think this was going to go on for so long. So I made a choice to tell her who I was.
أنا مش عربي. أنا يهودي إسرائيلي.
أنت يهودي؟ جد؟
إسرائيلي.
I am shocked.
Yeah, I know you're shocked. You want to have peace with me or you want to kill me?
No, you.
But you say you love Hamas.
Peace. No, I love all people in Gaza, I said.
You love Hamas. Hamas is good.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
How can you be okay with Hamas?
Really, I said that because I think you love Hamas.
I don't believe you.
Look. You kill our children.
You also kill our children.
But when 7th October happened, I didn't like it. I really, honestly, I become proud of 7th October. I celebrate in 7th October. Look, I am a woman. I love peace. I love all people. I respect all religions.
Yehudi is bad, not good.
Yeah, all the people in Gaza now don't want Hamas control Gaza. We are proud of them as Muqawama, as they make sometimes.
You're proud of Sinwar. You're proud of Ismail Hania.
Ismail Hania is good.
They destroy your country. They destroy your people. They destroy your life. Sinwar is good. Sinwar destroy your life. Sinwar is bad. But we cannot have salam if you like Sinwar. Sinwar want to kill me, want to kill my grandma, want to kill my Israel is not going anywhere. Israel will stay here, inshallah, forever.
Wait.
The issue that I'm pointing to in this video is bigger than me and this lady from Gaza. It's a failure at the hands of the UN and Palestinian leadership to push their people away from radical Islamic terrorism. Arab supremacy is a real issue in the Middle East. We see it everywhere we go, from Syrian Arabs Kurds, to Iraqi Arab Muslims massacring Mandeans, to Egyptian Arab Muslims massacring Copts, to Palestinians massacring Jews. I want to clarify, even though this lady wants to see me dead, I don't hate her. She grew up with a cancerous ideology, and we Jews have good reason to believe that most Palestinians hold these exact same viewpoints. That needs to change.
President-elect Trump has said there will be severe repercussions if the hostages held in Gaza are not released by the time he takes office. We spoke with one father whose son, an American citizen, is still being held in Gaza. Adi, Alexandra, thanks so much for joining us. Your son, Idan, has been a hostage for more than 460 days now. Tell us what it's been like for you, your wife, and your family.
We never thought that we will be speaking in terms of years and so many months. At the beginning, we thought it will be weeks, maybe months, and that's it. We were very optimistic at the first stage of the releases. It was November of the last year, and it's very disturbing, disappointing, and we miss him so much.
Adi, what do you think President Trump meant or means by they'll be held to pay if the hostages aren't released?
I think he will start with the diplomatic measures first, additional measures of pressure if if it's financial aid to Egypt, if it's arms sales to Turkey, if it's security guarantees to Qatar, or any other arms sales even to Israel. I mean, everybody, they need to lean forward, make more concessions, and to pass it over the finish line.
What about Qatar? Some people say there should be more pressure on this government that actually has been a sponsor for Hamas for many years.
Qatari, they have a huge role in negotiations. I think they want to prove themselves. I would let them this chance. There is no other mediating country right now that can take this place. So we have to trust. We have to trust them, and I hope they will deliver this time.
Yeah. How would you want people to advocate for your son and the other hostages, and how can people pray?
If you go back to October 7 of the last year, it was a most significant single life American lost in tens of years. You have to really go back to 80s to account something like that. 45 Americans killed on that day, 7 being held hostage. We have to keep this issue front and center. Put the pressure on our representatives and the new elected leaders and the new administration, of course.
Yeah. Tell us about Idan and what happened to him on October 7th.
So Idan was stationed on a tiny outpost, IDF outpost, next to kibbutz near Oz. This kibbutz suffered a tremendous loss. He was at this post by himself, and he was surrounded by more than 20 terrorists. After conducting a short fight, he had to surrender, and he found himself in the tunnels. He has been seen in the tunnels by the other hostages that were released back in November of the last year. And of course, we have another proof of life, that video that Hamas released on Thanksgiving's Day.
Several months ago, I was in one of those tunnels, and I can just imagine the horrific sense it must be for not only Idan, but many of those hostages. Final question, Adi, how are you holding up, and you and your wife and your family?
We have to keep fighting. We go on autopilot every day, and we saw Idan on that video a month and a half ago. It gave us more hope and more strength to keep going. That's it.
Yeah. Well, Adi Alexander, thanks for joining us. And I know that many people that are watching this will just join in many other people that are praying for Idan and for the release of all the hostages.
Thank you so much.
Changes are coming so fast in the Middle East, it's almost unbelievable. None of us could have predicted the changes and shifts that we're seeing today. Cindy Jacobs from Generals International is a great friend of Israel, and I asked her what she sees for the coming year. Cindy Jacobs, co-founder of Generals International. Cindy, you were with us in our Jerusalem studio just before October 7th, and you were saying you just felt 911 call to Israel. Tell us, here we are in January 2025. What do you see ahead for this coming year?
We are in the global reset. And of course, Israel is the signpost. And so that's very important to understand. And so what we see is that we're in a transitionary time, not only corporately, but individually, into the reset, because the reset will not only be for nations, but individuals. Very interestingly, when we were praying with a group of prophets that meets every year, one gave a word that as a result of the U.S. elections, that you were going to start seeing liberal governments fall around the world and conservative governments put in place. And the prophetic word said, and Germany will be the first one. And the next day, the German government collapsed. And then now we see France had a change, and now we see that Canada is having a shift. And so it's we're in a season of transition, and in a season that there are victories we've had, but we must enforce those victories. One of the things that happens in many cases, both with natural armies and, the army of the Lord, is that we stop praying too soon. And we believe even with Trump coming in office, this is a signpost for Israel and concerning what will happen in the hostage situation. And so I want to say, all of you, please cry out to God for Israel right now. And we also see Syria, very interestingly, what's happening. We need to pray for them that they not become ultra radicalized. Turkey will rise up as a new opponent in a strong way. But in the midst of this, we're going to start seeing great victories in the midst of great challenges.
Wow. And do you see that in particular in the Middle East? And as you mentioned, Syria was a huge geopolitical game changer in the Middle East.
Right. Yes, it was, of course. But we also know that a vacuum was created, and you know better than I what is happening against the Christians, the challenges they're having there. But we need to pray. Again, that's another case where we see a potential victory, but can go sour. And I feel that God is just causing Israel to stand up against their enemies one by one. But what an anointing Israel has to stand against your enemies.
We've seen such an amazing change, some would say miraculous. As we mentioned, October 7th, you talked about a 911 calling, but in the last 15, 16 months, Israel has defeated much of its enemies, Hamas and Hezbollah, and also the Houthis to a degree. And now looking at Iran, in terms of Israel's facing perhaps its greatest enemy right now, Iran, what do you sense about that?
Iran is thrashing. You know, it's in its death throes, as far as not the people, you know, but this current regime. And again, I believe if we will write all over the world, call for people to really cry out, I believe God's going to dismantle those nuclear weapons that Iran has, and that God will put an amazing regime in place that's going to be a friend to many. Can you imagine Iran signing the Abraham Accords or something like this? You know, it's not too hard for God. God gave us a word. This very interesting word is called disruptive glory, that God was getting ready to bring into nations something that would seem very disruptive, but would be for his glory in the end.
Wow. Well, Iran changing governments would be a huge game change in the Middle East, and we'll be watching and praying about that. Cindy Jacobs, thanks for joining us on Jerusalem Dateline.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's all for this special edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and you can access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And please continue to pray for the peace and security of Israel, for the protection of President-elect Donald Trump, and for the release of all the hostages in Gaza. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.